pull up a pew because this one affects all parents. And there are a few laws changing because there's like subsets to them as well. So I'm going to go into them all in more detail. Obviously, I have a lot of home educators on this, so I'm going to start there. Now, these laws are going to be coming into effect from August 2024. So this August. And obviously, this means that the advice that we give out on platforms such as this as home educators will need to change and amend as well. So up till August 2024, my prior videos all apply. From August 2024, it'll be this video and future videos in relation to deregistering your child that will apply. And now there's some great sources out there for the information I'm actually going to give you today. And one of my primary sources is edyourself.org. They've done a full write-up of everything that was discussed in Parliament in relation to these regulations. So you can head on over there and find out after you've watched this video. As I mentioned, the new laws don't just affect home educators, it's all parents with a child that is school aged. And its focus is primarily on those children who are aged 5 to 16. And it's not just home ed regulations that are changing or school regulations that are changing, but also regulations for EOTAS too. And they've tied this all in with the LA Section 19 duties, as I'll go into in a minute. The law on home education and deregistration is covered by the pupils' registration regulations. And for the last 17 years, we've been following the 2006 regulations with the additional amendments made in like 2016 and so on. But now we're going to be switching on to the 2024 ones. After the last amendments in 2016, they updated the CME, Children Missing Education Regulations. So that's likely going to be the case here again too. But on the 29th of February 2024 this year, the government disclosed the changes to Parliament with the intention for them to come into force on August the 19th, 2024. And like I mentioned before, there's two sets of regulations changing. The Education, Information About Pupils England, Amendment Regulations 2024, and the School Attendance, Pupils Regulations England, Regulations 2024. And it's also well worth reading the Pupils Information Regulations 2024 too. It's imperative that as home educators, but as parents, even parents, because this affects every parent of a school-aged child, as I said before, gets familiar with these new laws and regulations. But primarily schools and teachers need to be aware of this because the biggest changes seem to affect you guys. So this is a change in the law for schools. They are now required to provide information on all registered pupils to state whether they have attended the session or not. And they can also request additional information. And these changes in law have actually been introduced under the made negative procedure. And the made negative procedure doesn't require parliamentary permission. So on the 29th of February, they were informed that these were the changes that were going to be taking place, and we all have to comply with those. Now, one of the biggest concerns that parents who are home educators had was for those who have children with EHCPs and they're in the mainstream education system. We were concerned en masse as a community that parents would be forced to request permission if the child had an EHCP and attended mainstream school. But luckily that isn't the case. They haven't enforced that in these changes, and it still stands that you can just deregister your child even if you have an EHCP in place. The bulk of the changes actually seem to affect the schools more than us, in all honesty, from what I'm seeing at a first glance. And it is just a first glance, may I add. They're now going to be required by law to keep electronic registers. There's new attendance and absence codes as well, because the prior one left it to the school's choice to whether they wanted to report long-term absences, short-term absences, and so on. This time it's all law. You have to report all absences and also all returns to schools, especially if it's 15 days or longer. And this aligns with the LA's Section 19 duties as well. Parents are also now duty bound to ensure the child attends the school from the date they first attend that school. Okay, so it's not from the date you put in your forms to opt into the school system. It's not from the day that you state your interest in a particular school and which schools that you want in your options list. It's from the first day that your child enters that school as a pupil. It is now your responsibility to ensure that they have a full-time education in the school system and they attend every day. Or Section 19 can be triggered. So, deregistration. Let's get to the juicy bit. Again, there's new wording, but it's still not a requirement to request permission from schools. And we're also still not required to provide advance notice to the school of deregistration either. There are caveats, however. The pupil cannot be taken off the school roll if there is school attendance order in place. And that's how it's always been anyway. No change there. As I said before, in general though, permission is still not required to deregister your child. It is down to parental choice, unless your child is at a SEND provision school. And that even applies if you're in mainstream and your child has an EHCP. You can also backdate your deregistration date to the last day your child attended that school. So say you're a parent of a school refuser who suddenly decides to deregister your child, you can backdate it to the last date they were in school, as long as there isn't a school attendance order in place. And there's a lot more detailed information on all this on the edgeyourself.org website that I mentioned earlier as well. Those with an SAO will need to have the SAO removed first. Currently, home education and deregistration falls under Section 8, 1D 2006. From the 19th of August 2024, this changes to Regulation 9, 1F of the 2024 regulations. Section 19 primarily applies to school-going children who are missing in education and not home educators. Section 19 only comes into act for home educators if their education is deemed unsuitable. And there are lots of things that can trigger an S19 referral for children who are in the school system. Say you're having a house move and the school's suddenly further away and you haven't been able to get your child into a local one, that can trigger it. A child with long-term sickness in and out of hospital who may have tuition in place, that can trigger it because the LA is still responsible for their education, regardless of the plan you have in place with the school. Obviously, getting a school attendance order triggers the Section 19 too. And as prior cases have proven, it doesn't even matter if there's safeguarding risks involved either. Your child has to go to the school that they are registered to attend. And again, when we look at these prior cases, we can see that it's very unlikely that you will win that case. Let's just put it that way. And in the past, suitable education was defined as an education that met your child's age, aptitude and ability. This wording has now changed too. Suitable education is now defined as efficient education suitable to the child or young person's age, ability, aptitude and special educational needs. And the provision has to be available, possible and accessible to the child. There are again additional clauses in place for children with an EHCP, so I do recommend that you head on over and get yourself familiar with all these new regulations coming into act. An awful lot seems to be triggering that S19 and the SAO orders for parents with children in the school system. So I hope that helps and it's broken things down a bit easier for you. Please do familiarise yourself with all the documents, and honestly, edgeyourself.org has an amazing breakdown of it all for you in simplified language and terms that you can get accustomed with very easily. It's well worth familiarising yourself with these if you are a parent of a school-age child in England at this moment in time. Any questions, pop them in the comments and I will do my best to answer them for you. And if I can't, I will signpost it to someone who can, hopefully. But if not, maybe we can find it out together and delve into this topic further as well.